and you had first match was the rookies. No punching, no kicking, no fighting on the floor. You had to wrestle.
Speaking of a good time, it's a good time now because we're going to hear from my buddy, Instagram, a wrestling historian, with a super chat. He says, Bill Watts. Wow. Talk about maybe someone who, not a good time. He's another polarizing figure in the business. What are some good things that you can say about Cowboy? And congrats on the 5th anniversary of the ARM podcast. Man, he is a wrestling historian. 5 years with the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. I can't believe that it's been 5 years.
My goodness. Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
There you go. I like it.
The one thing I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, when I wrestled for Bill Watts in Mid-South, which was my first territory, so I was, just a baby. Everything was new to me. And the rules of his company was, I was a rookie, and you had first match was the rookies. No punching, no kicking, no fighting on the floor. You had to wrestle. And it was usually somewhere in that 10 to 15 minute range, which means you had to keep the audience interested. You had to wrestle, work some holds, body parts, and that groundwork that I learned from working for Bill Watts just paid dividends for the rest of my career, because I could always pull something out, pull a hold out of nowhere, whether it be an arm or a leg or a neck or whatever the deal was. And other than just running a bunch of high spots, I could tell a story, and either he was hurting me or I was hurting him, and you stayed with that body part. And that's an education that Bill Watts really pushed, and I was grateful to have had that knowledge when I left there.
There you go. So something good about Bill Watts. And thank you for sharing that. We're going to keep moving on because we got a lot of questions. And Albert is back on. And his first comment, Tori jumped on Arn because chicks dig a horseman, and she just couldn't help herself. All right, there you go, Albert. I'll drink to that, my friend. I got to meet Tori Arn, and it was Ric Flair's last match weekend, and she was so kind and such a sweetheart.
Yeah, and that
big time impression made on me.
As pretty as Tori is and classy and all those things, inwardly she's really a nice person as well, and it just makes everything else.
When you meet something and you realize they're a first-class human being, whether wrestler, sports, hero, it doesn't matter. And I'll say this about you too, and your family, the whole 9 yards. When you meet someone like that, because listen, there are a lot of people in this world, all of us that are here watching live, watching this and recording, we've all probably met someone in life that you kind of really looked up to or thought highly of, and then we're like, that it didn't leave the greatest impression on me. But man, when you meet people like that, like you are, and yes, I'm going to say it, and I would say it behind your back, or a Tory or someone like that, and they just make that impression on you, you never forget it. It means the world to you, and you become just your fandom for them becomes a different level because of it.
Yeah, because so many people who are gifted with natural beauty don't follow it up with inward beauty.
Yeah. Oh, well said.
And when that happens, it's worse than just a normal looking person who's a dick.
Right. Or a guy that maybe, or a gal that you thought was the best wrestler or this or that your whole life. And then as you learn more and grow up, I'm just talking for me, so when you meet the class people, that's where your fandom just goes a completely different level. So she's one of those people is what I'm trying to say. So if you guys get a chance to meet Tori, take full advantage of it.
She can jump on my back anytime she wants.
I love it. But that's the way we'll end that one. Albert is back again. He says Arn CB in the chat says it's his birthday too. We saw that, and he celebrated with 2 Hershey's with almonds. CB's opening up Albert's opened up the checkbook this week. So, Albert, thank you so much for all the super chats, man. We appreciate it.
So,
well, Arn, that leads us to our first fan question of the week, and it's from Mike Prue, and he wrote the following. Arn, when Watts took over as EVP in 1992, you seemingly disappeared from most shows, and then when he leaves in early 93, you're immediately back on television. Was there heat between you and Watts, and if so, why would that be the case?
Well, you have to go back and relive the 7-Eleven fight. Okay, the idea was that I had a bad knee as a result of it, and I was out selling that knee during this time period. I wasn't mentioned. I was, and that's the way it was in those days. If someone got hurt and disappeared off TV, you might have 1 week of the company letting you know what happened, and then that was it. They move on. That's where I was. I was home. I was still under my contract until the end of the year.
But in terms of a working relationship with Watts, Arn, you always seemed like you were a company guy. Was that the same type of relationship you had with Bill? Whatever you need me to do, Bill, I'm here. I'll do whatever you need.
I would challenge anybody that I've ever worked for, any company, doesn't matter, to say that I have not always been a complete and total company man, businessman. Whatever you want. Like I've always said, I never knew you could say no. I had no idea. I never said no except one time, and that, as we know, resulted in Tully and I leaving the company, Jim Crockett Promotions. But business all the way, all the time. Whatever you need, I gave you the best I had that day.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the comic
We're getting
book?
closer.
Yeah.
It's available, advanced copies are available on Amazon.
That's right.
Any other places that, that they can order it, and it's getting closer and closer. I'm getting the name tags or the tags that I'm gonna sign, and they're gonna put on them. They're supposed to be here Monday. I'm going to try to get all those signed and mailed back to Dirk and his crew, and let's start getting these things pumped out.
Man, that's awesome. And I was wondering if you had heard anything. I hadn't seen anything lately, but it sounds like it's continuing to move right along. So we cannot wait for that. As Arn said, you can search right in Amazon now and pre-order it, available right there on Amazon. Well, so listen, on February 10th, we move along a mere 8 days after the WCW executive stripped Watts of the majority of his power. He resigns from WCW as vice president of wrestling operations, and Watts would contend that this was because he could not work with Bill Shaw. You're familiar with Bill Shaw. And while that might be true that Shaw and Watts could not work together, the tipping point came when Hank Aaron, who worked as an executive for the Atlanta Braves, who also owned by Ted Turner, showed TBS president Terry McGurk the things that Watts said during a 1991 interview in the Pro Wrestling Torch after receiving a fax of the manuscript from Mark Madden on February 9th asking for a comment. And there's comments. If you want to look it up, you have more than you can do whatever you want to look up those comments. Arn and I talked pre-recording. I am not going to read those comments here on the show that Watts made from in 1991, but they are completely and utterly out of line, racial, and just just not appropriate. And for anyone that wants to, again, look it up, it was the tipping point. Watts was gone, and it's actually for the better. And speaking for Arn, myself, our entire team, in no way, shape, or form do we support or condone comments, sentiments that Bill Watts says. But Arn, this was the nail in the coffin for Bill Watts here in WCW.
Well, I wouldn't suggest anybody go back and look at it unless you plan on being nauseous, and that's okay, because it's the only way you're going to feel once you hear about all of it. And it was just one of those, again, it was one of those things that it's a what if. He committed suicide, career suicide as far
Absolutely.
as that company is concerned, and so things got better.